Our first speaker of the day is Dr. Antonietta Quigg, professor as well as the Associate Vice President for Research and Graduate Studies at Texas A&M Galveston, where she has been working since 2003. She received her undergrad and graduate degrees in Australia. Dr. Quigg has studied the effects of a variety of environmental stressors, natural and man-made, on ecosystems using phytoplankton as indicators on the response. And a little fun fact was that she lived in the U.S. She's lived in the U.S. since arriving in New Jersey on a very cold, snowy Thanksgiving Day in 2000, which they were not aware of when they booked their tickets. So they were not aware how cold it was, and they were not aware that it was on Thanksgiving. So with that note, let's go ahead and start. And Dr. Quigg, go ahead and share your screen and get started, please.
Thank you first to Sea Grant and for the invitation to present today. Very excited to share some of the work that we've been doing. Today I'm just going to give you guys a gentle introduction into marine snow and who makes the snow and where it comes from and why it's important. Some of this work was funded by the Gulf of Mexico Research Initiative as part of a program called ADAMEX, and much of the work that I'm showing you today is from the literature from the last 50 or 60 years of studies on marine snow itself. Starting with the beginning, which is the biological carbon pump. This is arguably the most important process on the planet, and it's responsible for the air we breathe. This process has been going on for millions of years, and it starts with the plankton. They are the photosynthesizers in the ocean, drawing down CO2, growing, and producing life as we know it in the form of photosynthesis, and in essence sequestering that carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and ultimately sending it to the seafloor, as you can see in this figure here. Phytoplankton are eaten by the zooplankton, and often these are eaten by fish. And in this way, the organic material moves through the food web from the smallest microbes to the largest organisms in our oceans. And when either phytoplankton or zooplankton and other creatures die, they release that organic carbon back into the ocean. Also, when they produce fecal matter, they're essentially releasing that carbon back into the ocean as well. Somehow, some way, this material finds itself and will aggregate. And as it aggregates, it becomes larger and forms visible masses, which we call marine snow. And this marine snow, as it becomes larger and denser, sinks through the water column, and as it does so, it buries the carbon associated with it. These masses of organic material are hotspots also for bacterial activity, and that's important because that activity breaks down the fecal matter and the marine snow and releases much of it back into the ocean again, where it can be reused. And so this biological carbon pump that you can see in this diagram here shows how it's a circular process, starting from the surface to the sediments and then back again. As I said earlier, this process has been going on for millions of years, and it's how carbon is buried in the deep ocean. And the petrol or gas that we put in our vehicles originally started as a result of this process many, many millions of years ago. So let's see. Okay, sorry. Give me a second. Having technical issues. There we go. Now, this is one of my favorite diagrams because it shows these microbial organisms releasing what we call exopolymers. And exopolymers are essentially lipids, proteins, and carbohydrates. And this material is very, very sticky. And as you might imagine, when it interacts with particles and other organisms in the water column, they will come together and aggregate and form that marine snow that we can see. Why do these creatures produce these exopolymers? That's a great question and something that we've wondered for a very long time. One of the main ideas, one of the main tenets is that they're releasing this material to protect themselves. So the simplest analogy I can give you is when you get a cold or the flu, you also produce a mucus-like material, which we call an exopolymer, and that's effectively helping to protect yourself from the aerosols in the air and things like that happen when you have allergies or when you have a flu and things like that. So protection is thought to be one of the primary reasons that they release this material. They're also very good at producing biofilms, and biofilms are found all over the ocean. I think most folks would be familiar with biofouling that happens on boats and in piers. That happens as a result of these biofilms being formed, and it essentially allows them to attach to each other in various ways. So when did we start looking at marine snow? When did we start thinking about marine snow and trying to understand it? The earliest records actually go back to the 1800s, where people were wondering how fish and other creatures that live in the deep ocean get their food, and what kind of food they were getting in the deep ocean. It wasn't really until the 1950s that the first publication, which actually is the sketch that you can see in this figure here, showing you a marine snow that was collected successfully without breaking it. Marine snow is very, very delicate and is often difficult to measure because it breaks so easily. But what you can see is different kinds of phytoplankton and zooplankton trapped in matrix of exopolymers. In the last 2 or 3 decades, with changes in and improvements in technology, we're being able to look at it much more carefully, and much work has gone into studying it down to the molecular level. And so if you look at it under the microscope, you can see that it's like a big spider's web in some cases, and that's probably how the different microbes get trapped in this microbial material. We've also used a lot of different kinds of staining techniques to see what is being trapped in the material, as well as the nature of the material itself. And carbohydrates are an important component of this marine snow, which makes sense from the point of view that they're inexpensive, and so a cell can probably release quite a lot of them without having also harm themselves by releasing this material. And that fits in with the idea that they're protective. Some of the biggest marine snow recorded was actually that associated with the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and that's the image that you see there on your right. And this was centimeters long and centimeters wide, so it was definitely very large. And in the next few slides, I will show you why we think that such large marine snow was able to be formed. Just a minute to talk about the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which occurred in 2010 and killed 11 people. At that time, it was the largest spill in US history, discharging more than 4.9 million barrels of oil, and for the first time using almost 2 million gallons of oil dispersants to break up the oil both in the surface as well as in the deep water. And I show you this image of a total because immediately after the spill, folks were really worried about what I like to call the charismatic megafauna. So turtles, dolphins, whales, birds, all the large marine mammals and fish that may have been impacted, as well as turtles and plants. But I was more interested in what was going on with the plankton. And so the plankton definitely don't make the news press, but they are certainly very, very important. So, so what was going on with the plankton and what was going on in terms of marine snow formation? This is a nice little slide because it summarizes the major ways that we know that marine snow formed as a result of the Deepwater Horizon spill. And it also distinguishes marine snow formation from oil mineral aggregates, which are also known to occur in the event of an oil spill. So if we start over at the left, the way that we normally think about marine snow forming is what I talked about with the first slide as part of the biological carbon pump, where snow is formed near the surface and it gets transported into deeper waters. And if you go to the second box, you'll see that the other way that marine oil snow was formed was through the fecal pellets of zooplankton. And that was, again, something that we know naturally occurs, but with the presence of oil, that may have been accelerated, maybe not. And so on and so forth. So there's definitely a number of different ways in which the marine snow can be formed. And in the last decade, a lot of energy and effort has been dedicated towards understanding each of these processes and its importance. Sorry. When you consider the formation of marine oil snow and its sedimentation to the seafloor, and the processes in between, the acronym Mosfet was used to summarize these. So Mosfet is marine oil snow sedimentation and flocculent accumulation. And really this is, Mosfet and our understanding of Mosfet is really an attempt to understand the many different individual reactions and processes going on that lead to the accumulation of this material. And you may ask, why do we care? And depending on which report you read, the Mosfet pathway is thought to have accounted for somewhere between 5 and 31% of the total oil returning back to the seafloor. And that's significant when you think of this being a biological and natural process. And when you consider that a lot of the man-made human type approaches to remediating the oil in many cases were less efficient. So Mother Nature, if left to her own devices, is actually pretty creative and very good about cleaning up our messes. At least that's how I interpret this. So Mosfet in the Gulf of Mexico was rather special. And there were a number of things that scientists feel were important in driving the formation of this event. One of those was the large and extensive drainage of the Mississippi River And in this slide, you can see what it looks like when you're out in the Gulf of Mexico and the brown Mississippi River water hits the blue Gulf of Mexico water. And you might see this little bitty boat at that transition zone, just to show you how significant that river discharge is. That discharge brings with it a lot of nutrients, which fuel phytoplankton, and very important for primary productivity. It also brings in a lot of suspended particles, and those are important in terms of Mosfet formation because they act as a kind of a surface area where the marine snow material glues onto and eventually helps with sinking. We should also remember that with all that primary productivity, there was likely enhanced zooplankton grazing, which released more fecal pellets, which I'm sure also led to more marine snow being formed. Here are some zooplankton. I would say for them it was like an all-you-can-eat buffet. And here's just some close-ups of the marine snow material. And in the slide that in the picture I just showing you, you can see how the oil droplets are getting trapped and sticking to that marine snow material so that it eventually sediments out. Again, you know, the why do we care question, I think part of it is because we're concerned that this is a route for hydrocarbons to move through the food web. And the other reason that we're concerned about it is because once this material does hit the seafloor, on its way down, different kinds of fish, both economically and recreationally important fish, are going to be impacted, as well as all the benthic creatures that we know exist on the seafloor. One of the questions that we get a lot is, has this happened before? And after an extensive literature search, it was determined that yes, it has happened before, back in the early 1970s with several oil spills. But the Deepwater Horizon incident is, I would say, where it's been most well documented and most effort has gone into understanding it. This is a bit of a chaotic slide, but it's an effort to summarize, I guess, the last decade of work by some folks to understand what are the drivers of marine oil snow formation, with a particular emphasis on looking at the biology and the chemistry. And if you look at the triangle in the middle, it shows you what is thought to be the major driving factors for marine oil snow formation. And if you have these critical elements, riverine influence, marine biota, oil and dispersants, it technically increases the likelihood that you're going to see marine snow formation in the various simplest form. What I show you on the right-hand side is trying to understand how you go from proteins and carbohydrates, which are very simple molecules, to marine snow, which is on the top right-hand corner. That is still an active area of research, and it's important for not just understanding how marine snow forms, but what are the consequences of this formation to the rest of the food web and to the health of the ocean. And then what I'm showing you on the left-hand side is some effort towards understanding on a more macroscopic level. So the right is a microscopic level, the left is on a macroscopic level. So the little blue and orange dots are images of, bacteria and oil coming together, and then the nice schematic at the bottom is an effort to show you how, under different circumstances, in the presence and absence of dispersant, marine snow might come together. And if anyone's interested in the details, let me know and I will send you the papers quite happily. I just wanted to say that it takes a village to do this work. This is my little village. We have in this photo a 15-year-old high school student to a now 88-year-old senior scientist. And so with this slide, I wanted to say thanks for listening to me, and you're never too young or never too old to learn about marine snow formation or to do science. So thank you.